Hello and welcome to this special video, something a little different here from the Chris Pritchard Cycling News Show. Saturday the 19th of September will go down in history, especially cycling history, as one of the greatest days of cycling ever. I say day, it was only about an hour of racing, but what an hour of racing it was. It changed the face of the 2020 Tour de France. Nobody saw it coming. Nobody could believe it happened. Let's take a look at the day TADEJ Pogacar did the impossible. This was the moment that TADEJ Pogacar realised he'd won the Tour de France. At 21 years old, he became the youngest winner of the event since 1904 and the first ever Slovenian to take the title. Now, to find out how he got here and why he looked so surprised in winning, we need to go back to stage 7, when it looked like he'd thrown any chance away of stepping onto the podium in Paris. 168 kilometres of relatively flat roads from Millau to Lavaux, considered as a transitional stage as the riders headed towards the Pyrenees. This stage was about staying out of trouble and saving energy for the GC riders, while the sprint teams would decide the spoils of the stage. However, all the riders did have to contend with the unseen enemy of crosswinds. In the last 35 kilometres, the roads became exposed and in came the winds to tear the race apart. Those riders who weren't positioned correctly risked being dropped and losing huge chunks of time in the overall GC. As you'd expect, Team Ineos Grenadiers and Jumbo-Visma had positioned their GC riders in the front group. However, TADEJ Pogacar was left behind in a group that would come over the line 1 minute and 21 seconds down on the front group, dropping Pogacar to 16th overall, 1 minute and 28 seconds down on the race leader. The following day's stage was a mountainous 141 kilometres, with 2 first cat climbs and a Hors category climb to contend with. This was the first day in the Pyrenees, and with Pogacar down in 16th, the GC riders above him had clearly thought he was already out of the running, as they watched him attack and ride away from them on the Peyresourde and hold on to a 38-second advantage over that main GC group, which shot him right back up into 9th place. And now only 48 seconds behind the race leader, Adam Yates. Now, the gap between Roglic and Pogacar stayed pretty consistent from stage 9 all the way through to stage 17 and the mountaintop finish on the Col de la Loze. And here is where most people thought the game was over. Pogacar went all in to break Roglic, using his final teammate on the last part of the climb to try and dislodge the Jumbo-Visma rider. But it was Roglic who stamped his authority over his Slovenian counterpart by putting in 17 seconds on him. His overall GC lead was now 57 seconds. But would that be enough? Surely, with only a handful of stages to go, that would be enough.
57 seconds, that's the advantage you have on today. It's not enough yet.
It's never enough. Like I said, when you have 5 minutes, you want 10. When you have 10, you want more. So still better to have these 50 seconds plus than 50 seconds disadvantage. So I'm really happy with it.
And as the riders headed into the 36.2 kilometre individual time trial to the top of La Planche de Belleville, it was still 57 seconds, and it appeared this was Primož's to lose. Now, on paper, Pogacar was favourite to take the stage win after already having beaten Roglic in the Slovenian National Time Trial Championships a month ago. However, we saw throughout this whole tour Roglic and his Jumbo-Visma team controlling the race, riding to their pace, keeping Primož's powder dry, and from the outside it appeared he'd barely gotten out of second gear at any point during this tour. But would that come back to haunt him? Could he have taken a bigger lead into the time trial if he'd been more aggressive in those mountain stages? Surely 57 seconds was a big enough buffer to ensure he'd take victory in Paris, right? Pogacar leaves the start ramp 2 minutes ahead of Primož Roglic. This whole tour comes down to the next hour of racing. 2 minutes later, and Primož Roglic is rolling off of the start ramp, his destiny of winning the Tour de France still in his own hands. 17 minutes into the time trial, Pogacar is 16 seconds down on current leader Remy Cavagna. As Roglic passes through the first checkpoint, he's already 13.5 seconds behind Pogacar, comfortably now holding on to a 44-second lead in the general classification over Pogacar. Just under 24 minutes into his ride, Pogacar had already caught his 2-minute marker Miguel Angel Lopez and passed him as if Lopez was out on a Sunday ride. Pogacar had now reached the base of La Planche de Belfi. It was time for the bike change, a moment that the mechanic, the DS, the rider had all been nervous about. This could make or break a rider's stage and ultimately their Tour de France, but thankfully Pogacar's bike change went as smoothly as it could do. He leant his time trial bike up against the car, the mechanic was out and pushing him within seconds, and you may notice that on that time trial bike he had his bike computer on there, but as he jumped on his road bike you'll notice there was no computer, not a power meter in sight. He was solely going to race this on feel from here on out. A couple of minutes later and it was now down to Jumbo-Visma and Roglic and their bike change. This one looked a damn sight scrappier, and even getting off the bike and getting back on the new bike, Roglic looked fatigued. It's almost like he knew the Tour de France was slipping out of his fingers and there was nothing he could do about it. Pogacar had managed to overturn a 57-second deficit into a 59-second lead. Now, just under an hour after setting off, TADEJ Pogacar was coming up to finish his time trial, and you could see from the looks on the Jumbo-Visma riders, they were shocked. I don't think anybody could believe what we were seeing, and it was finally dawning on them. They couldn't do anything about it. After 3 weeks of supporting Primož Roglic, after 3 weeks of getting his bottles, after 3 weeks of putting him in the right place within the peloton, they were helpless, and all they could do was watch on as TADEJ Pogacar not only beat their GC leader, he obliterated him from the face of the earth with this effort. And then the final rider out on the road was Primož Roglic, and he came over the line looking like a rider who had just finished their first 100-mile sportif. In fact, he reminded me a little of this guy. Pogacar had managed to overturn a 57-second deficit into a 59-second lead heading into Paris. So not only would he be collecting the yellow jersey, but also the polka dot jersey for the best climber and also the white jersey as the best youngest rider. He managed to climb La Planche de Belfi in 16 minutes and 10 seconds. That's around 6.5 watts a kilo, and if you compare that to Roglic, who did it in 17 minutes and 31 at 6 watts a kilo, that's 1 minute and 20 seconds. This whole Tour de France came down to that climb at La Planche de Belfi. This stage will go down as one of the stages of the Tour de France ever, and potentially this may be one of the best ever Tour de France. In fact, let me know down below, do you think this is the best ever edition of the race? We had to wait a long time for it, but when we got it, were we entertained or what? That stage was very reminiscent of what we saw back in 1989 when Greg LeMond managed to overturn his deficit and beat Laurent Fignon by 8 seconds in the individual time trial. You better believe that this one is going down in history. But I've got a few questions for you. What the hell happened to Rodlic's helmet? We saw him set off with a visor, a perfectly fitted helmet, but as he came over the line, was this down to overheating or had someone smacked him on the head? I don't know. But the rider who started the time trial 36 kilometers ago looked like a professional rider. But the one that came over the line looked like a rider who was just finishing his first ever sportif. Next question, and why didn't Pogacar have a computer on his road bike? Was this something him and the team had decided not to have on, that he solely wanted to ride on feel on that climb? Or was it a mistake on the mechanic by not putting it on there? Was he supposed to take it off his time trial bike and put it onto the road bike? Now, there wasn't any fitting for it, so that's highly unlikely. But it's just very strange to be riding at a specific pace, at a specific power on the flatter part, but then get to that climb and not have any idea of how you're going. But He had nothing to lose, so did it matter what he was pushing out anyway? He was going to go full gas, he was going to try his hardest, so did it really matter what he saw on that screen? I don't know. Next question, would Pogacar still have won if he'd not had a bike change? I think it's safe to say he probably would have, but it would have been a damn sight closer. And then the final question, what the hell happened to Roglic? He's not put a foot wrong all tour. He barely got out of second gear at any point, and when he did, he looked strong, he looked solid, he looked unbeatable up until this stage right now. And it wasn't like he was just beaten a little bit. It wasn't like there was a few seconds in it. It was night and day. It was like a professional rider taking on an amateur rider. It really was that black and white. The only thing I can put it down to is that the nerves and the pressure of the event got to him. Had that been a road stage, I think we'd have seen it play out completely differently. I think having his team around him to control the pace, to be able to support him and be there for him, gave him that confidence to know when to press, to know what to do, and not let the pressure get to him. But I think spending the day in your own head, waiting for that time trial to get underway, having an hour in your own head, on your bike, with no teammates around, must have got to him. And I think it was the pressure rather than him having a bad day because of fatigue that was actually the ending of his Tour de France. But I could be wrong. Maybe he was ill. Maybe he got corona on the last day. Who knows? But anyway, leave your comments down below about this. One of the most amazing moments in cycling history. If I'm wrong, leave your comments down below and let me know what was. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you've enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. Please hit that subscribe button. If you've not done already, hit that notification bell so you know when we go live with our videos. And I'll be back soon with a regular cycling news show. Thanks for watching.